It's the Hero Show. Welcome to the Hero Show, everybody, starring the irrepressible Andrew Bernstein and the rejoiceful Robert Begley. I am Andrew Bernstein, and you are indubitably Robert Begley. How you doing today, Robert?
I am fabulous, Andy, ready to celebrate the life of a bombshell who had more brains than just about anyone else around her, and whose invention eventually was like the grandmother of today's smartphone technology.
Yeah, and Wi-Fi, right? It's funny. The title of the show says of inventor Hedy Lamarr. But very few people know she was an inventor. They know her as an actress. So,
That's right.
so
Hmm.
So, and something, wow. I mean, she,
Yes. Pause to enjoy that.
yes,
Hmm.
Louis Mayer, head of MGM Studios, where she did a lot of films,
Hmm.
called her the most beautiful woman in the world, and she may well have been.
Yeah. Amazing, amazing life that she lived. One for the ages.
Not just another
Let's
pretty
start from the
face, is
beginning.
she? Not just another pretty
No.
face. All right, all right.
One of her most
So,
famous quotes, Andy, is to say anyone can stand there and look stupid. Any actress can stand there and look stupid, and but not Hedy Lamarr, not at all. But that's not how she was born.
no, she was born. Her dates are 1914 to 2000, and her name was
Yes.
quite a mouthful. Hedwig Ava Maria Kiesler. That's I can
Yeah.
see why Hollywood shortened it to Hedy Lamarr.
Change it too. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Born in Vienna, Austria, right?
That's right. Vienna, Austria, of Jewish descent. So you can see the foreshadowing of some bad news with the coming Nazi regime. Madly in love, Andy, with her father, who was a banker, but spent every waking moment showing her how things worked. He'd take her on walks and they'd pass a factory and he'd describe, the electricity and the lighting and trolley cars and things like that. And so she became fascinated with how things work and very curious as a little girl, not as close with her mother, who was a pianist, was an accomplished pianist, but knew that she became attracted to the theater at a young age and saw that as a future path in her life.
And her father was a bank director, right? But he was a
Yeah.
technology buff, and like you said,
Yes.
he really instilled the love of technology and how things work in his daughter. Was she an only
Yeah.
child?
She was
Was
an
she
only child,
okay?
and and basically we could say he was a stellar man. Emil was his first name, and just jumping the gun a little bit, of the six marriages that she
Six, right?
had,
Right.
all of which failed, her father was the ideal that none of those men ever lived up to. So, I mean, this is not, she was not the first one to have that kind of reaction,
Right.
um,
Right.
but yeah, so
Sad.
she's tinkering with things as a little girl, taking apart toys and putting them back together, and then has this interest in the theater. So in the beginning, with her parents' approval, there was some resistance, but the only child part is also it's also important, Andy, because she was independent. She had this streak of independence that clearly you and I value, and it's not like she was a spoiled. I mean, the mother, you could say, might have tried to spoil her, but she earned her keep in everything that she did.
And she has that capacity to project it on screen. Just the other
Yes.
day, I rewatched. Actually, I saw for the first time her first Hollywood film, Algiers, with
Yeah.
Charles
Hmm.
Boyer. That made her a star in the United States. And she has this
Yes.
capacity in that film. She plays this very very calm, self-possessed woman. She knows what she wants. People, her fiance is trying to order her around, tell her what to do, and she's very calm. And no, no, no,
Hmm.
this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go take a walk. I'm going to go to the Casbah, and she has that.
Hmm.
You could see, uh, there's a verisimilitude there. There's a reality to it. That capacity is very strongly presented in some of her film roles, and
Yeah.
but I guess we're getting ahead of ourselves. We'll discuss certainly her career as an actress. But I just wanted to say, it's great that she had such a really good relation with her dad. It's sad, of course, six
Hmm.
marriages, and they all ended in divorce within a few years. But romantic relationships are hard. We know, they're difficult.
Hmm.
We know that, and unfortunately, Hedy
Yeah.
Lamarr was not able to find a fulfilled one in that arena of her life. But in other areas of her life, she certainly was tremendous success.
Yeah. So she's on the screen from age 13, 14, making films, first in Vienna, then Berlin. And then the big, she's 18, and the big moment in her life is this film, Ecstasy,
Right.
which was, wait, if Andy, if you could piss off both the Pope and Hitler with a movie, what do you
You're doing
think?
something right. You're doing something right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know they filmed her in the throes of an orgasm, and
Yes.
I think she did a nude scene in Ecstasy.
Yes.
And
Yep.
in parts of Europe, the film was very successful. It was viewed as an artistic film, probably not in Ireland. I'm guessing. The Catholic Church had such a strong grip back then. But it was
Hmm.
banned in Germany. It was banned in the United States, uh, and I've
Yeah.
never seen it. Have you? Have you ever
Yeah,
seen
I
that
did.
movie?
I actually did. You can find a lot of her stuff on YouTube, like, for free, actually. And that one
Yeah.
you can actually find for free. It's not much of a, it's interesting how it kind of paralleled her life. She's a younger woman who's in a loveless marriage,
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
and she
Right.
just goes for a swim. She's on a horse and goes for a swim, and the horse runs away. And then there she's naked, and this younger guy comes and sees her, and they fall in love. And, um, that's basically not much more to it than that. But that film put her on the map. There was the outrage. Even her father was disappointed in her. Now she's only 18. Okay. And then she meets, um, her future husband and marries right shortly after that. Uh,
Mandel was that? Oh, Mandel was
that's
right.
right. That's
The
right.
munitions,
Hmm.
the munitions manufacturer who was friends of Mussolini
This
and Hitler.
That's right.
Right.
And even though he was Jewish, as well, he was friends with Hitler, and she would be. Uh, they just thought she was this pretty woman, so she would be around the dinner table while they're having discussions about munitions, and she's absorbing this data, not to
Yeah,
put it to use
I
in
read
that
that
moment.
she
Mhm.
went with her husband to conferences of technologists and munitions
Yes.
manufacturers, and she learned a lot about the technology. And by the way, it's interesting. There's nothing funny about Hitler, but obviously, the hatred of Jews. But if this guy can make weapons for me, I guess we'll tolerate him, right? If he can build
Pragmatists,
up,
right?
yeah,
Pragmatism
yeah,
rules in
right.
totalitarian states. Yeah. So yeah, but Mandel is very controlling, and she realizes that this is not going to last for her. And it was 1935. Yeah, her father has a heart attack. So now she's 19, newlywed. Father has a heart attack and doesn't die on the spot, but she's concerned about him, and she wants to visit more and more often. And his final day, she parks outside the building he lives in and doesn't go up right away. She's chatting with a friend, and notices that the shades are pulled down, and then she rushes in and is asked, "Are you the daughter?" Yes. He passed away 20 minutes ago, and
Oh,
she's
God, that's
completely crushed. And then, he has a note saying, "Hetty, take care of your mother." Okay, so he already saw that she was the more mature, even at age 19. But also, be yourself was one of the things he told her, which could be construed, Andy, as get out if you can, because the storm clouds are brewing here in Europe, and we see the direction. So she's under the control of her husband, who is simultaneously going to be under the control of Hitler, and she finds a way out. She has this escape route, uh, this is what she says in her biography, that she found a lookalike, you know,
A lookalike for Hedy
screen
Lamarr? Wait,
lookalike.
what? A
Yeah.
lookalike? A lookalike? What happened to that girl?
Can you believe that? Yeah. Dresses
Yeah,
her up as a maid and then switches out costumes. So the maid stays at home and she escapes from the clutches of her husband, who is tracking her, listening to her phone calls, and just super possessive. Finds her way to Paris, then to London. And in London, Louis Mayer of Metro Goldwyn Mayer is in London scouting talent,
right.
foreign talent who are now no longer able to work, and he can get them for cheap labor. And meets her, offers her $100 a week. What does she say? No, I'm
She
worth more
says
than
no.
that.
Yeah, right.
And then she makes sure she's on the same boat that he's on going to America. And they're at a dinner and she just comes out all glamorous. And Mayer sees all the eyes turn and look at her and offers her 500 a week instead of a simple 100. And Mayer's wife, like the actress Barbara Lammar, so they wanted to change her name because the ecstasy thing was a black mark for her.
Yeah, it was
So
in the
that's where
United
she took
States.
the
It was
name.
in the United States. It was
Yes.
notorious. It had been banned, so they
Yeah.
wanted to. They wanted
Hmm.
to. They want to get away from that the actress who was in that infamous film. So yeah, they changed her name.
Yes. Hmm.
Right,
Hmm.
right.
And that's where, as
So
you opened
yeah,
up, Andy, that's where Mayer calls her the most beautiful girl in the world. Yeah.
yeah. So it's 1938. So she's 23 or 24, and of course
Yeah.
the first American film in Hollywood was Algiers, right? With
Yes.
Charles Boyer,
Hmm.
who's a very good actor, by the way. He always played these ladies man in a lot of movies,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
yeah, I like that. Well, I don't want to spoiler alerts if we're going to discuss. If we're going to discuss these movies. Algiers is very sad, but have you seen it,
Yeah.
Robert?
Hmm.
But
Yeah, I saw
again,
that too. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it was fascinating, and like I said before, Hedy Lamarr. They say somebody who was in the theater when the movie debuted, 1938. This said there was a gasp from the audience when
Yes.
when she first appeared
Yeah.
on screen because she
Yeah.
was so beautiful. But the thing is, um, Hedy Lamarr to me, and I've seen a few of her films, is much more than just a pretty face. I mean, she had genuine acting ability, like and like I said before, now
She was one
Algiers
of the
is
few, Andy, Europeans to cross over and attract American audiences on America's terms. That was definitely one of her things. Elliot, if you could bring up the next photo. Here she doesn't have her hair parted down the middle, but as you were saying, Andy, she would have this part in the middle and women started emulating her, with that outfit,
right.
with that kind of look. Here, this is the I think this role is the inspiration for Snow White. Spoiler
Looks
alert:
like
Snow White and
it.
Catwoman were two. She was the inspiration for two as dramatically different, roles as you can imagine.
Snow,
Snow
yeah, right.
White, the kind of virgin, and then Catwoman, who's like this ultimate,
This slinky creature.
strength.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
There's a trivia.
yeah.
There's a trivia question. What does Snow White
Hmm.
and Catwoman have in common? Yeah, they were both
Right.
gestated from the fertile acting career of Hedy Lamarr. But I was
Yeah.
always impressed with Hedy Lamarr as an actress. I thought she was really good. And
Yeah.
too often they cast her in
Few
these
more of the roles we
stereotypical.
could just go through. You and I discussed Boomtown as a big hit of hers, co-starring
Yeah. Yeah,
Spencer
well,
Tracy, Clark
that was
Gable,
that
Claudia
was
Cavall.
quite a cast,
Yeah.
right? I mean, Clark Gable,
Yes.
Boomtown, and I recommend Boomtown, for that rugged individualism of
Yes.
of
Hmm.
America back then. Clark Gable's my all-time favorite actor, anyway. The great
Yeah.
Spencer Tracy is in it. Claudette Colbert, Hedy Lamarr. It's a terrific cast, with a lot of star power,
Hmm.
and it really
Hmm.
glorifies these wildcat oil men, who are real rugged
That's right.
individualists. And I thought it
Hmm.
was a good movie. But Hedy Lamarr, who's very good in the film, but she's so often she's typecast as this as the siren, this alluring
Yes.
woman who's destined to lose the man she loves to the girl next door kind of thing. Reminds me of
Hmm.
Kay Ludlow in the
Right.
fictional
In
character in
Atlas.
Atlas Shrugged.
Yes.
Yeah, because that's what she
Hmm.
says. That's what she that's why she didn't
Yep.
like starring in the in the movies. And Ayn
Hmm.
Rand, the creator of Kay Ludlow in Atlas Shrugged, spoke in Ayn Rand had such a way with words about the incommunicable vulgarity of spirit in Hollywood. A lot of that, unquote, the
Oh yeah.
incommunicable vulgarity of spirit. How's that? And a lot of the movies are sappy and sentimental, and It's a Wonderful Life comes to mind with
Hmm.
James Stewart. And the girl next door is often triumphant and and everything. So it's kind of like the clientele for Gail Winans, the Banner, in the Fountain. And you got
Yeah.
these women's
Yep.
clubs, and and everything. They're very conventional and very sentimental, glorifying the home and mom and apple pie. Not that I have anything wrong with.
Hmm.
Not that I have anything against mom and families and or anything. But here's Hedy Lamarr, who's this beautiful woman, very sensual and so often typecast. Like in Samson and Delilah, which I think was her biggest hit. I just
Yes.
rewatched it the other night. I can't get. She's so sensual and so slinky
Yes.
and seductive. I can't get her out of my mind. Now she's outstanding in
So
those
I
kinds of roles. Oh,
I
okay.
have it here, Andy,
Sure.
as
Yeah.
well. So I have to interject. And Elliot, actually, you could put up the image of her in Samson Delilah. So growing up as a Catholic, this we're actually in Advent, leading up to Easter week. They would show all these religious movies, and Victor Mature was the
Right.
hero in many of these movies. My grandmother's like favorite actor because of that. But when I saw her, I'm like 12, 13 years
Yeah.
old, and I was
Forget
like,
Victor
this
Mature.
is a woman.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is a woman. I'm
Yeah,
saying to
really.
myself, this I can't get her out of my mind. Okay, so that's how young I was when I first heard of Hedy Lamarr, and as my family who she is, and just yeah, that picture. She steals the camera.
Yeah.
You must look at her, even if there are other people on the screen. That's one side of her, Andy, that we could say she just mastered. She just owned the screen when she was on it. But now I'd like to transition to the lesser known side of her. So this is 1948, no, 49, actually, same year as The Fountainhead. So imagine film 48, and I think it won the award in
Yeah,
1949.
just
But
let me
yeah,
interject for a second
go
here,
ahead.
Robert,
Mhm.
because I was thinking, I like Patricia Neal as Dominique in The Fountainhead, but Hedy Lamarr, could you imagine her at the granite quarry, seducing Howard
Yeah,
Roark,
yeah,
cracking the fireplace and trying to lure him into her bedroom where she's going to resist, but that's a whole nother story. But to lure him, I mean,
yeah.
Hedy, oh my God, I realize Ayn Rand described Dominique as a blonde. She could have dyed her hair, but who cares what color her hair is?
Yes.
Nobody could have
Yeah,
allured, Howard Roark, the way Hedy
I
Lamarr could.
agree.
I mean, she was
I,
the perfect.
yeah, yeah. And she's older now. She's into her 30s, by this time, but still just magnificent, magnetic on camera.
Yes.
But this is already late 40s. So what I want to do is pivot a little bit backwards and go to her invention. So in the early 40s, once Hitler is taking power in Europe, she's making money in Hollywood, and she feels I want to do more. I want to do more. My mother's over there, and how can I help? So now she switches gears towards the inventive mind. And by the way, let's go back, Andy, to a couple of weeks episode on
Mhm.
Howard Hughes. She met Howard Hughes. He gave her this little invention kit that she would have on the set. This one that we see is in her home. So she would always be tinkering. And when he was building the fastest plane in the world, she bought two books, one that showed how fish swim and how birds fly. And then she just came up with this wing pattern that made it slightly edged. Before then, the wings were like more rectangular. and Howard Hughes used that. I'm shocked actually she's not in the Aviator film, because she certainly deserves it. And
Yeah,
as you,
right,
we talked
right.
about Howard Hughes, you could see similarities between the two of them. That yeah, Hollywood is one thing, but I have a mind, and I want to put that mind to use. So while the war is going on,
Wait. Just
she
let me
had
say
already
just
yeah.
let me say
Go ahead,
one
Andy.
thing
Mhm.
here, Robert, and that is, that yeah, Howard Hughes recognized her genius, so and her talent, so good, so good for Howard Hughes. But it's interesting. She said that the stereotypical roles that she got in Hollywood, almost always playing the siren, the alluring
Yes.
seductress, was not challenging to her. And so she was
No,
bored by
she was
it. So
bored.
what does she do? She's
Yes.
bored, and so she turns to tinkering and inventing, and then comes up with this,
Yes.
this brilliant innovation. So I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. And even before then, she would make tablets that were like Alka-Seltzer tablets, but they were more for like carbonated beverages to give soldiers boosts of energy. Okay, so it wasn't this first thing, but during the war, the German U-boats are attacking many of the American ships that are bringing supplies to Europe, and she feels like I have to do something. I have to think of a solution to this. The headlines of one newspaper show German U-boat kills 280 people on a ship, including like five, 50 children. And her mother wants to come over, so she has this idea, working with a composer, an avant-garde composer, of finding a way around the signals, jamming the signals, because the transmission between the radio, the torpedo, and the ship, it was on one frequency, and the Germans could catch that frequency and then jam it and then basically see what was happening. So her idea was frequency hopping, which came
Right.
from the composer's ballet mécanique, where you just alternate going through all these different variations that are not really traceable. And she goes to DC to the inventors. They just opened up this council of inventors and wants to show this patent. And what do they say? They're like, look, you're a beautiful woman. Why don't you sell war bonds instead? You can raise money for us.
So,
So, more of the
so
same.
so stereotypical. Like, like a beautiful woman can't also be a brilliant inventor.
Yes, yes. Which, by the way, 25 million in war bonds, which is the equivalent of like 300 billion today, she sells by kissing soldiers, by doing all these things. So here's the patriot part, Andy, that we talk
Yeah. Oh,
about,
yeah.
in the
Yeah.
title.
Let me say something. Now, let me say
Yes,
something
go
here, because
ahead. Go
yes,
ahead. Mhm.
um, she was, her family were Jews, and although her mother had converted to Catholicism and was a practicing Catholic, but still, she was Austrian, and Austria pretty much welcomed the Nazis, with open arms,
Sadly,
which is
yeah.
yeah, very
Mhm.
sad and tragic. But Hedy Lamarr became an American citizen in 1953, right? And you're right.
Yes.
She was all in support of the American war effort, or the Allied war effort against the Nazis, and
Hmm.
she wanted to do it as an inventor, like you said, but she ended up selling a lot of war bonds, in support of
Yeah.
the
Hmm.
American war effort. So yeah, I mean, Hedy Lamarr was an American patriot. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
And for that, for that we honor her as well. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
she was a multi-talented individual, that's for sure. Let me just tell a brief story here. It's a friend of mine
Sure.
who graduated from MIT, the
Uh-huh.
Massachusetts Institute of Technology, told me that at MIT, the 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 men there, there's an expression amongst them, that amongst the female students, brains and beauty stand in inverse proportion to each other.
Hmm.
So I don't know if that's true about the female
Yeah.
students at MIT, but it was definitely not true in the case of Hedy Lamarr,
Hmm.
who
Hmm.
much more than just a
And
pretty
also,
face.
yeah, and she would say the brains of people are more interesting than their looks, and it takes someone who looks like her to make that kind of comment, because it's sad for her to I mean, let's put it this way, Andy. If you and I are in her presence, it's going to be hard for us to just think about her brain. I got to admit,
Yeah,
it's going to be hard, but I could have an intellectual discussion and I could celebrate her heroism as an inventor. Eventually I could probably get that way, but I see that as a big challenge for her. And uh, so, but this idea of being like not the other thing is she didn't have any kind of degree. I think she stopped school at like 14, 15 years old, but self-taught. Here's where
right.
the curiosity, the autodidactic element, and fortunately for America, the idea where these ideas can be put into practice. Now, sadly, she did have a patent, but it wasn't used during this invention was not used during the war. Elliot, if you could show the other image with her with the calculation above her. Yeah, so this is August 11, 1942. This is the schematic that she has coming up for this frequency hopping um, concept, which was used during the Cuban Missile Crisis. They actually used
Right.
it in the early 1960s. So eventually it was put to use, but she was never financially compensated for it. So this is today, it's like a
Yeah.
$300
Yeah. And
billion
that
industry that
technology,
has spawned.
right.
Yep.
That spread
Yes.
spectrum frequency hopping
Yeah.
technology today is worth billions. And then
Yeah.
unfortunately, she wasn't aware of the patent limitations and restrictions and expirations and everything.
Yeah.
So she didn't make a dime out of it. Although you're right, that technology was not adopted by the U.S. Navy during World War II, but it was later in the 1960s, and certainly she should
Yes.
have been compensated for it. Although she did pretty well in her film career, I think her estate was worth over $3 million when she passed away. At least that's what I've read.
Yeah, that's true, but she also took risks, Andy. So now she wanted to. So her film career is starting to sag a little bit late into the 50s, and she wants to be a producer. So she produced two films, but they actually both bombed out. So she lost a lot of money on that. And in between, she's married, divorced, pumps out a kid, married, divorced, pumps out another kid, and so very unstable uh, home relationship. But one of her husbands, I can't remember which one now, but he had a
Yeah, there
resort
was
in
six.
Vail.
There was six of them.
Yeah,
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 that's
in
right.
Vail, Colorado,
Right,
and that's
right.
where she had this idea from living and growing up in the Swiss Alps and skiing there. She's like, well, we could design something here and make it, turn this into a world, world famous resort, which eventually has been. That's what it became. So on all different levels, her
Yeah, well,
mind
yeah,
was
we
at
should stress
work.
that she designed the ski resort, right?
Yeah,
Right? Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I mean, yeah, let's just bang out a design for for a ski resort. This was a very very imaginative and very inventive mind that we're dealing
Yeah,
with here. And combined with
yeah.
obviously beautiful woman. But again, I want to keep saying this over and over again. I do think watching Hedy Lamarr on screen, I always got the impression that her acting range was wider and broader than the roles that Hollywood's typically relegated her to. She was
Hmm.
so good as the siren. That's
Yes.
it's understandable why Louis Mayer and MGM and these other heads of other studios did that. But I don't think they ever really took advantage of her full range of acting
No.
abilities.
No, and Andy,
So
imagine if there was a good version of Atlas Shrugged done during her lifetime, where this is a Dagny Taggart. If ever there was an actress who was qualified to understand the depth of a mind of a Dagny Taggart, it's Hedy
yeah,
Lamarr.
the
I can't think of
railroading.
someone that is like a head, that jumps in front
Yeah,
of her as
the
far as the list goes.
No, I hear you. Dagny Taggart was a genius in the railroading industry. She was an engineer by training and by talent and by inclination. Hedy Lamarr would understand the engineering involved, and of course, Dagny was a beautiful woman. So yeah,
Hmm.
Hedy
Yeah.
Lamarr would have been perfect for that
Hmm.
role, and could have been it could have been a signature moment in her career. Because it's so different from all the sirens, and the alluring
Yes.
seductresses that Hollywood almost always had up portray.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
quite
And
quite a lot. I just wanted to mention George Antheil was the name of the composer that she collaborated with.
that's right. Yeah.
Wasn't that
Ballet
his
meant,
name? But it was
yes.
her
And his
idea.
story is interesting too.
But it was her
Go
idea.
ahead.
She went to him. She went to him for the for the
That's
actual
right.
physical prototype of her invention. But she was the one who she was the first cause and prime mover of this. What they known as this spread spectrum frequency hopping
Yeah.
technology that you described briefly
Yeah.
just before. She was the prime mover of it. So again,
She was the prime mover
this is a
of it.
brilliant mind.
Yes. And he was highly motivated because his younger brother was the first casualty in World War II, first American casualty. His plane took off and was shot down by German in the UK, and it was shot down immediately by the Brits, by the Germans. So he was highly motivated for the West for the Allies to win the war, as was she. So they both had this selfish motivation that we if we work together, we can outthink, we can outthink the enemy. And again, even though it didn't happen in real time, it was put, the technology was eventually put to use. And as we move along in her life, she's getting less and less roles. She's aging. Sadly, in one of the real problems with Hollywood is they give you pills to go to sleep, they give you pills to wake up, and she certainly had her allotment of those. Her looks were starting to fade. She does plastic surgery. That's not successful. I think she was one of the first ones actually to come up with the idea of plastic surgery. So it was new in the game. They hadn't yet mastered it, and so she's becoming more and more disillusioned with
Yeah, we should
with
point out that Robert, that to this day, Hollywood is fixated on for actresses on beautiful young women.
youth.
As the women age, they might
Yes,
still be
they
beautiful,
tossed
but
them.
there are no roles. Yeah, I mean, Michelle
Yeah.
Pfeiffer
Hmm.
comes to mind, as
Hmm.
one more recent example. Who
Hmm.
was very very attractive, well into her 40s and 50s, but there just weren't that many roles that Hollywood had for for middle aged or more elderly women. It's for women actresses in their 20s and 30s. You got to make hay while the sun shines, because your career is gonna. You're like an athlete. Your career is gonna be over by the time you're 40. So
Yeah.
yes, that happened.
But
That
Andy,
happened
I
to Hedy
think,
Lamarr.
yeah, and I
Yeah.
think you kind of foreshadowed that in your point earlier that even in literature, I mean, how many mature females have this quality of independence and inventiveness in the field of literature? It's not as common, not as often as it should be, and that's one reason there aren't as many roles. I mean, this is why I wish today's writers would ditch the Spider-Man version 5000 and all these remakes and try to come up with original ideas where you have these brilliant women doing these incredible things, and
That's a
so
good
because
point.
those roles didn't happen. Mhm.
That's a good point, Robert. Because in recent years, we've had a bunch of films about women who are real warriors, and well, what's the 5-5? I think was a recent one with Jessica Chastain.
Okay.
Uh,
Hmm. Hmm.
there's a whole bunch of them. Atomic Blonde with Charlize Theron. They all bomb at the box office because I think the audience understand that if it comes to physically kicking ass, males have a advantage, over
Yes,
females. Uh, but
by nature.
intellectually, yeah, right.
Yes.
But intellectually, there's no gender difference, and
No.
the opportunities to create roles for women who are geniuses, to write those parts in novels, plays,
Hmm.
screenplays, and everything, like Ayn Rand did so many years ago. That the character of
Yeah.
Dagny Taggart, but Ayn Rand's philosophy just
Hmm.
hasn't caught on yet. The realization that the mind, is our tool of survival, and the mind is what we should
Yeah.
glorify. The mind has no gender basis, has no racial basis, and everything. You can have so many real heroines, who are brilliant minds in any field you want them to mention: medicine, entrepreneurship,
Yeah.
technology, literature,
Hmm.
music, physics, chemistry, across the board. But writers writers don't understand this point, even though Atlas Shrugged was published, over 60 years ago. Uh,
Mhm.
writers don't understand this point. Hollywood certainly doesn't. So, but hopefully one
No.
day there will, and we'll see. I will see a lot of. What would be a good start? Let's make a Hedy Lamarr movie about her life, and not just dwell on. This would be a good
Yeah.
start. Not just dwell on the alluring siren roles that she played in Hollywood films, although that would be
Mhm.
part of it. But let's really focus on the genius, the inventiveness, this new technology that
Mhm.
she did. That would be a good start to have
That would
stories
be
about. That'd be a real life one. But then we could extrapolate from that to fictional examples of heroines who were geniuses and who make real advances in any field you want to mention.
Yeah, actually, even staying with the Ayn Rand, last week we talked about Kira, and We the Living is also that kind of model. And the Golden One and Anthem. I mean, Ayn Rand knows how to portray a strong female lead. I remember when I lived in New York, I'd see women walk around with this, actresses, strong female lead, and I'd say to myself, well, what do you do? Any role from Ayn Rand's works is a strong female lead. Okay,
Yeah, and
but somehow that's
don't forget, Kira was studying engineering. The
yes,
communists kicked her out of school. But Kira
yeah.
Argonova was studying to be an engineer, which Dagny Taggart, achieved in Atlas Shrugged in
Yeah.
a freer society. But
Mhm.
yeah, these
Mhm.
Ayn Rand's point, if the mind is mankind's tool of survival, then a woman can do all the intellectual work that a man could do, including in heavy industry. She could run a
Yes.
transcontinental railroad as effectively as her father or grandfather, or not Taggart, as any man
Mhm.
could. And so at Hedy
Mhm.
Lamarr shows inventiveness as an example. So hopefully Ayn Rand will be much more widely read in the future for many reasons, including the glorification of the mind, especially the glorification of the
Yes.
mind, including male, female, black, white, Asian, Latino, whatever. Let's see
Yeah.
heroes and heroines who are geniuses, who are really doing productive
Mhm.
work and advancing human life in any field that we can mention. And Hedy Lamar's a good place
Mhm.
to start, Robert. She shows it in real life.
She is
You know,
yeah.
she showed it in real
Yeah.
life.
And in her life, as she gets older, she's becoming more of a recluse. Some sorry incidents, shoplifting. Twice she got caught. One time she had like $80,000 in her purse, but she pocketed some pharmaceuticals
Twenty twenty
and
dollars worth of $20 worth of
$20
stuff
worth.
out of a
Yeah.
drugstore, right? Right. Yeah.
And
Well, that's a
so
sad.
clearly something's off here.
Yeah.
Clearly
Yeah.
something's off. The charges were dropped, but she's back in the press, and now it's because her looks are fading. The media is jumping on all the negatives of her life, and then Mel Brooks. So I got to say about Mel Brooks. So he saw her on screen when he was a kid, and he's like,
Right.
"I want to go to Hollywood, and I want to marry her. I want to meet her and marry her."
That'd be marriage
Okay,
number seven.
so
Marriage number seven for Eddie Lamar, which could have lasted 2 years
that's true.
before they got divorced.
Yeah.
But anyway, go ahead.
Although Mel Brooks did do well with Anne Bancroft.
Oh
I
yeah,
give him I
yeah,
give him credit with that.
yeah,
So
for sure.
Blazing Saddles comes out in, I don't know if you remember this, but
Yeah, so
Hedy
funny. Yeah, so
Lamarr
funny.
is named
It's so
one of
funny. Yeah,
one of the
yeah.
characters. And she's like, you're using my name here. You can't do that. And he's like, okay, let's write you a check. Let's settle this out of court. So she's in the press, but not for the reason she should be, as we just mentioned. And then more and more she's losing her uh life is becoming harder for her, and she becomes a recluse, only is talks on the phone. And then finally in the 1990s, Forbes magazine does an audio interview with her. By the way, there's a documentary called Bombshell, which I recommend. I'll put it in the show notes. I think PBS had it, and they play this cassette tape interviewing Hedy Lamarr, and she talks about her inventions. She talks about her life and her career. And once this idea is comes to the surface of the technology that she invented and all of the ramifications of it, and now that Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and all these technologies are so influential in our lives, it's like, okay, now we have to recognize her. Okay, we have to recognize her, and she was not better about it. She says, thank you. It's good to be known. I'm happy with this invention, and I appreciate you acknowledging and honoring me. And no one like sour grapes in her life for that.
Hmm.
So, um, she's getting older and older, and moves to Florida, leaves California, moves to Florida, is in Miami for a little while, and then settles 10 miles north of here, this place, Castleberry, Florida. And her
North of
one
here,
goal is
here being Orlando.
Orlando. Yes,
Right? Yeah.
that's
Okay.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, just yeah. And her goal is to make it to the new millennium. Okay, to after 2000. So 85, she has to be more than 85 years old, born in 1914, and she does. She makes it to not a couple of weeks after January of 2000 is when she passes away. But a
Yeah,
life well
we should
lived.
say no, no, for sure. I think we
Mhm.
should also add that in her later years, she was. You would mention she was reclusive. She spent hours every day on the telephone, right, talking to her
Yes.
friends and family members. That was the way they had contact with her. She rarely
Yeah.
came out or entertained. So
Yeah.
the good news is she had friends and family members. She had three children. I know she was estranged from
Yeah.
her oldest son, right? But
Hmm.
she might
Hmm.
did she have better relationships with her other
They all
kids?
reconciled. Yeah, they all
Okay, good.
reconciled though at the end. Yeah. Hmm. Hmm.
So she had people in her life, even if it was just on the telephone. But
Yeah.
yeah, was there a documentary or something on TV called calling Hedy Lamarr? I think there was
There was
some.
yeah, there were several of them. Yeah, calling because the
She was on the
concept of
phone.
only
Yeah,
speaking with her. Right. Yeah. Hmm.
right,
Hmm.
right.
But
Uh,
it's amazing that she spends so much time on the phone, and now like smartphone technology is so reliant on her discovery. Imagine the uh,
right, right. She
turnaround
died in
there
two.
of that.
She died in 2000, so she didn't live to see that. But yeah, I
Hmm.
mean, you're right. Her developments, her inventions are like what did you call it earlier? The grandmother of Wi-Fi, or it's
Yeah,
certainly,
Wi-Fi and
yeah, right.
Bluetooth. Yeah.
And
Hmm.
Bluetooth, right? That's right. So we can look at these photographs of Hedy Lamarr and acknowledge what a beautiful woman she was, but much more than just a pretty face. As they
Yes.
said, talented actress who I don't think ever really was given the chance to show the full range of her abilities. But the good news, that's sad, but the good news in that is that from her boredom, she turned to inventiveness. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
So
Why
her
did you
mind
invent?
never rusted
Yeah,
away. Yeah.
yeah. The mind never rests. The mind never sleeps. So why
Yeah.
did you invent the grandmother of Bluetooth and Wi-Fi technology, Ms. Lamar? Because I was bored with my acting career. I mean,
Yeah.
wow,
Yeah.
wow.
And she said invention is easy. I
That's
don't
right.
know any
That's right. Yeah.
inventors who actually say invention is easy, but it would just come naturally to her. And even the idea, Andy, I kind of think of Ayn Rand, the way she came up with her concept formation. Someone just asked her about it, and she just on the spot gave an answer, kind of solving a mystery for that had been going on for thousands of years. And Hedy Lamarr sees a problem with the war, and she's like, let's come up with an invention for this. Let's find a way to win this war. And again, even though it didn't directly translate to it, she put her mind to use, and the repercussions, we're still benefiting to this day. But that active mind is something, and that curiosity, again, which she got from her father. He deserves so much credit in her life for being the kind of person who she became, as far as this mind. But similarly, Andy, on the screen, she just dominates. She would dominate the silver screen like few other people had ever done, no matter
You know,
what
you,
role she was put in.
you're right, because I'm just thinking about Boomtown where she doesn't
Yeah.
have a big part in it, but there's a scene where Spencer Tracy comes to her because it's complicated. He's in love with Claudette Colbert, who's married to
Yeah.
Clark Gable, and Hedy
Yeah.
Lamarr's going to allure. Of course, she's going to allure Clark Gable away from his wife, and Spencer
Hmm.
Tracy proposes to her. And you're right in that. Yeah, he's a great actor. I mean, Spencer Tracy is an immortal. He's an all
Oh
time great.
yes.
But
Yeah.
but you're right. You can't. I mean, man, you and I are heterosexual males, so maybe it's different for a woman or somebody who's gay, a gay guy. But for heterosexual males, I mean, I'm just focused on Hedy Lamarr. It's not just that, and I don't think it's just heterosexual male here because there's a magnetism she had. It wasn't just her beauty. There's this the way she carried herself, the self-possessed quality she had.
Yeah.
She was magnetic. And yeah, you do. Your eyes are focused and you're on her and your ears on the way she speaks. Her voice
Yeah.
inflection, her intonation. She's a very talented actress. I'm convinced. She was great in
Hmm.
those siren roles, but certainly I think she could have
Yeah.
done. She could have excelled in much wider roles, like you were saying before. If there was an Atlas Shrugged film, I think she would have been perfect.
Hmm.
As tone down the
Yeah.
sensuality because Dagny is very, very, very professional. Play up
Hmm.
play up the competence, the professionalism, and the genius in railroad
Hmm.
engineering. And I think she would have been great
Yeah.
in that role.
Hmm. Hmm. But
Uh,
we're fortunate that she was just not one. She had multi-talented, and again, even the patriotism side, I think it's
yeah,
very important that she. So think of the wealth that she generated as a film star, U.S. war bonds, uh, patented this technology, which we use every day. All of these things, the wealth that she generated, uh, due to her being, her mind and body, it's staggering.
yeah.
It's absolutely
Yeah,
staggering.
it's a great accomplishment. I want to just also, but before we close, I want to mention
Yeah.
Marlene Dietrich here in this context. Who's from Germany.
Yes.
Hedy Lamarr was from
Yes.
Austria, but Marlene Dietrich, actress, sing, also very, very talented. I just rewatched a couple of months ago. A witness, Agatha Christie's Witness for the Prosecution. What a
Yes.
story! You got Agatha
Great film.
Christie's
Yeah.
plot. Yeah, you got Charles
Yeah.
Lawton, Marlene Dietrich, Tyrone Power, real star power in the film. Anyway, Marlene
Hmm.
Dietrich also very patriotic American, come from from Germany, and I don't think her family were Jews, so there's I don't think that had anything to do with it. But she was patriotic
Hmm.
American. She recognized the brutal totalitarian nature of Hitler's regime, and she spent so much time at the front entertaining the boys, entertaining our troops, as a singer and everything. They said about her that she spent more time at the front than Eisenhower. And that chokes me up that she really
Yeah.
supported she
Yeah.
really supported the
Hmm.
American war effort, and Hedy Lamarr did also. You're right;
Yes.
raised tons of money, selling war bonds, which wasn't even the main way she wanted to support the war effort. She wanted to support the Allied
That's
war
right.
effort as an inventor, but you
Yeah.
you you already told
Hmm.
that story. So she did what she
Yeah.
could to raise millions and millions and millions of dollars in the sale of war bonds. So yeah, these are women from Nazi countries who were very strong
Hmm.
American patriots. And
Yeah.
I think we definitely have to salute that. Um,
Hmm.
so I think we have paid homage to a
Yeah.
multi-talented
Thank you, Hedy
person
Lamarr.
like.
Yeah.
Yeah,
For.
thank you, Hedy
Mhm.
Lamarr. Like her boyfriend, briefly, because how she and Howard Hughes dated briefly.
Yes.
Again,
Yeah.
Howard Hughes, it's unbelievable. Such an accomplished filmmaker, aviation designer, test
Hmm.
pilot, as we noted, uh, monopoly busting entrepreneur. Enormously successful in a multiple array of fields, and so was his girlfriend for a brief time, Hedy Lamarr.
Hmm.
As an
Hmm.
actress, as an inventor, as a patriot supporting the American war effort. I mean, we have to. I think we can salute the
Yes.
great Hedy Lamarr, like you said. Thank you,
Yeah.
Hedy Lamarr,
Thank you.
and yeah, and I think. We want to wish everybody to hopefully we can be inspired by these hero stories and heroine stories.
Hopefully,
So
hopefully Hollywood could be inspired by the lives of Hedy Lamarr and Howard Hughes. That there's more to just being on a screen, Andy. There's a lot more to life than that. So I'm sorry I interrupted
yes,
you closing, but go ahead.
especially to, like we said, to glorify this, the
Yes,
mind, which makes all the
yes,
advances in agriculture and medicine and architecture, any field,
hmm
any field you want to mention. And the key thing, of course, is if if we really sincerely want to oppose racism and all of its hideous iterations, the mind has no race and the mind has no gender. And so
right,
we
yeah,
glorify the mind. The one way to do it is we could make movies about brilliant heroines, of brilliant heroes of any race,
individualists.
ethnicity. Yeah,
Hmm.
individuals, exactly right. So I want to wish you, Robert, and everybody else. Hope you have a heroic day. I have to go off and teach these
You too.
bright, eager young minds in the colleges, which is
Great.
something of a heroic activity.
Yes, it
So for
is.
all of us, let's have, because a lot of them aren't so bright, eager, or happy to get an education. But anyhow, some are. I want to be fair. Some are, and I certainly focus on them.
Hmm.
But, for those who want to get an education. But for everybody out there, let's lead. Let's have a heroic day. Let's lead. Let's strive to lead more heroic lives. And we will be back next week with more stories of heroes on the Hero Show. We'll see you next week, everybody.
Yes.